Welcome to the Thai Sustainability Summit 2021. I hope you've been having a good morning and listening to some amazing speakers so far. I am a charter member and a member on the board of Thai Hyderabad. I also run my own management consulting firm called UpSurge Global, and I'm a venture partner with one of India's leading venture firms called Venture Catalyst. I have been associated in doing some work in the social impact space for the last few years, and that gives me outstanding reason to be here today. And I'm looking forward to a session that we are going to be spending some time with my fellow panelists today, talking about the age of the green philanthropist. The time today has come for a lot of us to start looking at green philanthropy from a very new perspective, from a very new lens, to see how do we need to look at converting a lot of the wealth that has been created in this world to go towards sustainable goals. And I will be talking to four amazing individuals over the next 1 hour around this. Let me start by introducing you to our keynote speaker for this 1 hour. He's Mr. Abhay Deshpande. He is the serial entrepreneur, and he's the founder currently of an organization called Recykal, which he created in 2016. Essentially, Recykal's digital solutions have brought end-to-end connectivity between stakeholders of the waste management industry, which was a very fragmented and to a large extent still continues to be a fragmented ecosystem. He believes that technology is the driving force behind brands and the whole informal sector getting collected, aggregated, and recyclers, aggregators, government authorities. So he's working on a platform which will bring all of these together. And this isn't his first venture. Like I said, he's a serial entrepreneur. Before this, he founded a company called MartJack in 2007, which created India's first SaaS company, and it engaged with the entrepreneurial ecosystem, enterprise ecosystem platforms. This company would go on to build a SaaS product for global markets spanning MENA and APAC. And he was instrumental in conceptualizing the company's vision, product market fit, sales team, and eventually scale. He holds the unique distinction of building the largest digital platform in the country without any PC or VE, completely bootstrapped. In September 2015, Capillary Technologies acquired MartJack, making it supposedly one of the largest transactions in SaaS and B2B space in Asia at that time. And then he has also been involved in building Malamal, which was arguably India's first e-commerce venture in 1998. So he's been around, he's been doing this work for a while, and he believes in a motto that teamwork makes the dream work. And that's the mantra he's been following. So welcome to the talk show today, Abhay, and looking forward to kind of talking to you. And maybe if you can start by talking to us a little bit about your entrepreneurial journey. And you continue to be an entrepreneur, but jumping from a SaaS platform, e-commerce platforms to a fairly large impact organization. So why don't we start with you telling us a little about your journey?
Thanks, Vivek, for this wonderful introduction. Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Thai, for inviting me for this session. I think this journey has been there for last 24 years, Vivek. On 10th of October, I will be starting my 25th year of my entrepreneurship. So I think, and it was tough. It was not that easy. I think being a first generation entrepreneur, my father was a government servant. He was a judge, judicial officer. And for me, this whole, and those days like 97, 98, the entrepreneurship, that word itself was not there. In fact, yes, to business bolte the zaman. So I think the things I started my first venture in 98 called Malamal.com, was an e-commerce marketplace, first e-commerce marketplace from India. Pretty early, 10 years ahead of the time. I think learned a lot during those 98 to 2007. I ran that company, got funded initially. Then after the .com burst, there was no funding. So those 8 years, I couldn't become malamal from monetary perspective, but learned a lot about entrepreneurship, became malamal from the knowledge and the real what you should not do in business was some big learnings which I had there. So I started my second venture, Martjet, which was a SaaS company, software as a service company, where we were solving the problem of a brick and mortar retailer who wanted to go digital, wanted to connect with these consumers online, just not in the store. And that was again the first SaaS company in India. And India being a different market, people don't pay for software, forget about paying as a software as a service, monthly fees. So it was tough. It was not easy. But then I think cloud and SaaS were new words. It was like people only knew the word SaaS B2B Bahuti. SaaS means only that was the word known to the people. But then we have to change that mindset. We tried to do that. But to some extent, we could do that successfully. We had 10,000 plus medium, small customers, large 250 enterprise customers like Walmart, Future Group, many more, and in India, Middle East. And we raised a couple of $1 million for that company through a tough journey. It was not that easy, but then I think the team was amazing, great. So in 2015, it got acquired by Capillary Technologies. So I think almost it took 17 years of tough entrepreneurship. I never had more than $2,000 in my account in the whole journey, 18 years. Liabilities of $2 million always on my head. But those were like passion was something we always knew that we were building something, and that perseverance, that team spirit and the trust on each other actually really helped us in surviving. Then the good days came, 2015, the acquisition happened, all the investors. I could create 25 crore-patis, couple of millionaires, and even my office boy, my driver became a millionaire in rupee term. He became an entrepreneur after that. He bought a car and became an Ola entrepreneur. So could bring a considerable change in around 175 people's life were my team members, and around 86 investors which I had. And that's again a different story, but I don't suggest anybody to go for that. But I ended raising money from 86 investors in 135 tranches for a 100-month company. So many people ask me, should we do it? I say, at home. It is similar to someone's ad on TV where he jumps here and there, but whatever it is written there, don't write at home. It's very risky. But I thoroughly enjoyed it. It was a tough journey, but as an entrepreneur, you have to go through that. Given a chance again, I don't mind repeating the same journey again. So I don't have any regrets, although all my main period has gone into struggle, but at the end of the day, the results were good. After the Martjet success and after the exit, I became an investor, accidental investor, invested in a couple of startups. But then I realized that I'm not still an investor material. I'm still a horse who can build something more. And I was looking for opportunity, and somewhere that instinct, I felt that waste management looks like a big space and it's very unorganized, cash driven, and a big challenge, big problem to every individual across the country. And if we could bring some disruption, some technology there and channelize this whole ecosystem better, there can be a big opportunity. And the beauty of this business is there is impact in this. So basically, but we started it as a startup. We run it as a startup, but it has a huge angle of impact. We're impacting the overall environment. We're impacting the livelihood of many people who are exploited in the industry. We're doing a lot of work there and giving them the better livelihood, better income. All that is happening now. But the biggest advantage was that impact angle was very important for us. So sometimes I internally call it that Recykal is nothing but a startup with purpose. We are a startup. We are for profit. We are building it, but it's a huge angle of impact, which makes us a startup with purpose.
Fantastic journey, and this is a motivating factor for a lot of younger budding entrepreneurs that there is light at the end of the tunnel. Sometimes the tunnels are long, but doesn't matter. There is light at the end. And when you do end up, and what a satisfaction it must have been with 175 people becoming entrepreneurs or millionaires, going on to fulfill their own life's vision. So fantastic, Abhay. And talk to us a little about Recykal, because I think, you did touch upon it, that you are kind of democratizing that space. You're bringing a lot of empowerment to these people. But talk to us a little, because I think coming from such a strong technology background, you've spent the first 17, 18 years in technology space. And from what I understand, having known you a little bit, that you are bringing that whole technology aspect, innovation aspect into this so-called old-fashioned space, where everyone just thinks about the kabadi wala, that Raddi fellow who comes to your house to buy old newspapers, glass bottles, sometimes PET bottles, but mostly this. So talk to us a little about Recycle. What's your vision? What do you want to achieve in Recycle?
Yeah, so I think what happened till 2014-15, last 10 years, particularly from 7 to 15, we saw a lot of disruption happening on the consumption side of it. We saw Oyo coming, Uber coming, Ola coming in. They are disrupted. Everyone has disrupted pre-consumption or consumption state of the business. Last 3-4 years, we saw B2B part of it, initially consumer part of it. So most of the, and good thing in last 10 years that everyone started using technology. Everyone, even in my business, even the rat picker who is the bottom of the pyramid, 60% of them have smartphones. So that's the change India has seen happening. And most of these people were aware about the technology by 2015-16. So when I was thinking about this opportunity of bringing digital intervention or a disruption in the supply chain, so the biggest challenge in waste management, as I said, was it's a very unorganized market, and the people work in that are non-educated. They are and completely cash-driven economy. But one thing we had a conviction internally that more disorganized or unorganized the market, more bigger is the opportunity. But it needs that perseverance. When we started in 2006, we knew that it will take 10 years for us to really build something valuable. And we spent the first 2 years in understanding each player of the ecosystem. So we went to the rat pickers. In fact, in Hyderabad, we went to their houses. We went, how is their lifestyle, what they do, what time they get up, what time they do, how much time they spend on internet, and interesting learnings we found there, and what their aims are, and what we change their habits of doing the current way of business. And then we saw that there are 6-7 people in that ecosystem, from the rat picker who is at the lower bottom of the pyramid, who is doing the maximum hard work, and he is getting the least share of the economical benefits. He's only getting 20-25% of it. Then there is a small kabadiwala, then the big kabadiwala, then master kabadiwala, then there is an aggregator, baler, and then there is a trader, and then recycler. So there are 6-7 people in the ecosystem, and there are many of them were not really adding any value into the ecosystem. They were just there because they had money, muscle power, and the relationships. So we thought, can we connect these people at the bottom of the pyramid, rat pickers and these first level kabadiwalas, by empowering them, by giving them a technology, building the awareness, formalizing them. In one way, we have started formalizing the waste management ecosystem, which was completely informal. I think the least GST was paid till 3 years back on waste because people were just buying and selling at cash. So we thought, can we really formalize them? We opened bank accounts for them. We gave them GST registration. And we actually tried to bring them into the mainstream. And that has happened only with one thing, because we removed a couple of people from the ecosystem. Unnecessary disintermediation we did. And that 25-30% benefit which was going to them, we started passing out to them. And in India, you know that any change you want to bring, there has to be a greed or there has to be a fear. So I think fear was beyond us. It's only Modi ji can do, but the greed is something which is in amounts we could bring into the system by giving them extra incentives. And that's how the disruption started happening. One good thing happened 3 years back, that government regulation also plays a role. So government came up with a regulation called Extended Producer Responsibility. And they made all the producers like Unilever, Godrej, Pepsi, Coke responsible for the waste generated by them. And that was a policy decision. Now, I think that has actually changed the whole dynamics of the waste management industry. Like what demonetization did for fintech industry, where every small guy today makes a payment by GPay. Right. Similar thing happened because of that regulation here. So both things happened simultaneously. So today, even there are 10-15,000 rat pickers who are using our app. There are 1,000 aggregators who are using our technology. There are 150 recyclers who buy 50% of their material using our application. We're almost analyzing around 20,000 metric tons of plastic and e-waste every month, and PET1 is one of the major 5,000-6,000 metric tons. So I think what we did is that we actually changed the way they were doing business. It took a long time changing that perception. Initially, we did it on WhatsApp. We gave them 1 month credit, immediate payments, everything to feel that we are trustworthy. We have to build, because these people will not trust anybody unless you build that relationship there. But then once you do that, then it goes viral. And we are seeing that for last couple of months. So our vision is to basically channelize this waste. There is nothing called waste. Let me put it one statement, which I learned in my whole 4 years, that everything is a resource for somebody. And unless this resource is used again and again, and the circular economy is created, we are going to be like in a dead end of the world, because these resources are limited, and unless the existing resources are used, so that actually making this initiative more powerful, and the connecting all the stakeholders is something which we are able to demonstrate. Our vision is to do around 3 million metric tons of waste channelization by 2025. That will be around 10 to 15% of the waste country will generate. Right now we are at 300,000. This year we'll do at 300,000 metric ton as compared to 60,000 last year. So I think another 10x growth from here will be able to really contribute that 15% of India's waste will go to the place where the resource will come back into the circular economy rather than going into a landfill or ocean, and create that negative impact on the environment as well as the climate.
Fantastic. And Abhay, before I kind of move on and bring some of our other panelists on, I just want you to touch upon that. What did it take for you to build Recykal as an organization? So currently, I understand you are completely bootstrapped. So what did it take for you, and what's the plan on the financial side for the organization to be looking at getting to that point of 15% of the country's waste management?
Yeah, so I think this time we were lucky. We raised some capital, not bootstrapped. Recykal is not completely bootstrapped. So we raised around $5-6 million till date. And the one thing which I would like to tell everyone, that there is a lot of money available for this kind of ventures who are focusing on SDG, who are focusing on circular economy, or the green initiatives. There is sustainability, huge focus. I can tell you there are at least 25 funds I have met in last 8 months or 1 year, and I have written many inbound inquiries that they would like to invest on us. But then what they are looking at is, see, there are two kinds of investments happen into this space, impact space. One is completely CSR driven or the NGO driven, where the money is spent, the money is used and done some charity work for that. The other way is investment on building some revenue or business model which can be scalable and which can really solve this problem. And I think the second one is more sustainable in that angle. So there's enough of capital available. We are also raising a large round of funding, which will be announced soon, might be in 3 weeks or 4 weeks. And we see that to achieve that 3 million metric tons in next 3-4 years, a lot of capital, a lot of manpower, a lot of like-minded people need to come together and build it. It's not going to be just 150 people which we have together. It can be 800 people team. And we're just focusing on India. We had many opportunities to come to Indonesia, come to Australia. We said our country itself, we're not even touching the surface yet. It's such a large opportunity. So we'd like to focus here. Enough of funding available for any entrepreneurs who are even trying to think about green, about sustainability, entrepreneurship. My suggestion to them is, now the world has changed. There are people who are specifically wanted to invest in these companies.
Fantastic. So for those of us listening to us, you heard from Abhay that, something which is like waste management, which a lot of people did not think about a decade ago, is such a massive opportunity. And they are doing some outstanding work here. And also the silver lining on the cloud is that when we are talking about green philanthropists, here's someone who's done it himself, came from a serial entrepreneurial background, decided to get into this space, put the money there himself, and then, of course, raise money. And we will hear in the next 3 weeks the big news that Abhay is talking about. And other good news is that not just venture funds, there is enough CSR money, there is enough grant from the government which is available. So funding is, if you can create the right means, and as Abhay has demonstrated, the right technology to be able to take that on. And thank you very much, Abhay. And with that, I'd like to kind of have some of our other panelists, 3 of our other amazing panelists, to join us to have another maybe 35 minutes of a panel discussion to enlarge this conversation and get a few other perspectives in, and 3 very, very distinguished but very different perspectives that we will hear from these 3 individuals. So it gives me great pleasure to introduce Dr. Evita Fernandes. Dr. Evita Fernandes is the founder and ran Fernandez Hospital herself for a very long time, till recently she decided to create a governing body and then hand over the hospital to the governing body and governing council, who now runs this. and she continues to stay very, very active. And we will hear a little more about her, but I am so amazed with the fact that the way her passion drives the whole concept of use of midwifery and midwives, and how she promotes that is something which existed as a tradition in India, and how we need to actually go back to that. And we'll hear more about that from Dr. Evita Fernandes. So welcome, Dr. Evita.
Thank you.
Next coming to Mr. Vijay Chaddha, or if I may call him Colonel Vijay Chaddha, retired army officer who then went on to have a very, very successful corporate experience. He worked with successfully with organizations like Air Freight, Carlson Wagonly Travel, Coney Travel, and then decided to jump from the corporate side to the impact side and became the CEO for the Bharti Foundation, and is currently the CEO for the Air Pollution Action Group, someone who's very passionate about making a difference to the society, and has been working in the impact space for close to 11 years directly, and much longer indirectly, even during his corporate life. So thank you very much, Mr. Vijay, to join us today. And last but not the least, the world cannot be complete without a startup. Nothing in this world today can happen without a startup. So an enterprising young entrepreneur, Mr. Taran Chabra, who's the founder and CEO of an organization called Neeman. And Neeman is completely revolutionizing the whole footwear space, where they're bringing out a whole range of footwear, which is coming from very, very amazing things. And we'll hear more from Taran, but he's making woolen shoes, or shoes made out of woolen material. And the latest range of shoes that he's introduced a couple of weeks ago is a 100% PET bottle, which has converted into a shoe. So the shoe is made out of 100% PET bottles, shoes, slippers, and a whole range of footwear. So thank you, Taran, for joining us today. And we'll expand the conversation we were having around green philanthropy and green philanthropists. So I'd like to start with you, Vijay, for someone who's seen three versions, so to say, a version in the defense services, a version in the corporate world, and now a version of you in the impact space. So do you think this whole concept of sustainability, green philanthropy, is it something which is possible to be mainstream for organizations, not the NGOs, not the, pure impact organizations, but do you think the time has come for this to become mainstream from an organizational perspective for large organizations now? You're on mute, Vijay.
Sorry, Vivek, I'll take a minute or two to take people back into history, actually, since you've spoken about my three lives. So to share with everyone, I'm in the last leg of my 50th year of work life. Right? So 31st March, I complete my golden jubilee of active occupation. I mean, that's when I got commissioned into the Indian Army. 4 years before that, I joined the National Defense Academy as a cadet, having decided on my career. So one has actually seen life transforming. So I'll make a few admissions of guilt too. So my life in the army, I mean, those were different days altogether. The 60s and the early 70s, we thought, there we were wearing uniform, a matter of pride. We were ready to die for our nation. We, saw some part of the war, and, we thought the world belonged to us. And we did a lot of good things. But I must confess that we were completely unaware about any such thing, that we also had a social responsibility. We believed that by, committing our life to the nation, we were doing enough. But I do believe that for any armed forces officers who may be listening to us, or people from the armed forces families, every organization needs to have a social responsibility and can make huge, contributions and impact. That's where I believe the army lost out, because we were unaware, actually. I do not believe it was a big issue in those days around sustainability, but I must confess that as an individual, I'm guilty of damage. Then we came into the corporate world, an entirely new scene. I I joined the corporate world in 92 after having sought premature retirement as a colonel. It was a new world because India was liberalizing. My timing was just right by the grace of God. A lot of things were changing. A lot of international companies came into India either with interest or with investments. So a lot of learning started coming into corporate India. Prior to that, corporate India was more about family-controlled businesses, where I don't think anyone spoke about corporate social responsibility, but it was more about pure philanthropy and donations. And good companies would build schools, good companies would look after certain villages around the vicinity of their factories, companies would build temples and mosques and gurdwaras probably, right? So, and that was our hospitals, part commercial, part, charitable. So as my understanding was, that was where the corporates contributed their might into society. But towards the latter part of the 90s, that started changing. The concept of corporate social responsibility in a small way started coming to existence. Companies, especially due to the impact of large global organizations coming in. Vivek and I worked for a global organization which was owned by an Indian entity called Air Freight, DHL, right? So a lot of things were learned from there. So global organizations started having their impact. Indian multinationals came into existence. So we started understanding what corporate social responsibility was all about, and also the distinction between what responsibility was and what social was, and how to align both these elements and create sustainability around that. So things evolved, right? So I was part of that evolution where organizations started giving for causes they believed in. And there was emphasis also on sustainability and green to an extent, environment, but I don't believe that was the core. 2008, when I transited to the development and social sector, if I may call it there, but still corporate, as CEO of Bharti Foundation, part of Airtel, Bharti Group, right, with a mandate to set up 1,000 schools in villages to give free education to poor children. Right? That's when I really understood what this sector is all about. Right? And where giving was. My boss was Sunil Mittal and Rakesh Mittal. Sunil, everyone knows, he's a luminary. So that was his dream, that he says villages must have access to quality education, and Vijay, this is what you have to do. After 250, we realized that this drive is not sustainable. We can't build 1,000 schools and more, and 1,000 will do nothing in India's context. So for sustainability, we need to find a different route. And that's where we went on to impact government schools. Learning from Sunil, we could have funded our foundation, which spent 150 to 200 crores annually ourselves. But he decided that this foundation would be a universal recipient. We will also receive donations from and CSR funding from like-minded corporates and individuals who believe in the cause and can look at us, the transparency of our model, the governance, the impact on ground, right? So that was the first learning, that, you universalize what you have, right? And then you learn a lot, because we would have been restricted had we carried on with our own funding, which we could have. But having so many other corporates contribute to us, we were subject to scrutiny because everyone wanted accountability on every penny that they gave us, which we were giving. And that gave us huge amount of learning as an organization how to run. So I'm sharing all this because I'm sure that this will be useful to people to understand, how things evolved. And of course, there's a lot of learning in all this. We came into contact with a lot of corporates, and the government's work to set up the Institute of CSR and the ministry getting involved in the CSR regulations, making CSR mandatory. I don't know whether it's good or not, good or bad. The debate on that is still open, right? Whether it should be voluntary or whether it should be, from the heart. But despite everything, it brought it to the center stage. So organizations became aware of the fact that there's something called CSR. People wanted to come on board. Smaller organizations became sensitive, right? Of not only what they would like to do, but also what is their responsibility. I do believe that every individual, every organization has to be socially responsible.
Fantastic.
We cannot insulate ourselves from that, irrespective of who we are, what we are, how big or how small we are. And keeping that belief in mind, Vivek, and just one more stage in my career again, after I decided that it's time for me to retire from Bharati Foundation, I mean, a person like Mr. Deshpande, a person who's made a lot of money and turned philanthropist, Ashish Dhawan. He was the founder of Chris Capital. He made his billions and decided that he will get into the social space and make a difference and set up his own foundation in education called Central Square Foundation, who is doing amazing work. And on governance called Center of Excellence for Governance in Indian States, which is working with state governments to improve governance levels in states and help them, drive impact, and also monitor things on ground. And he got hold of me to work on air pollution because he believed that that's such a critical aspect of it. In his travels in China and other countries, he's seen what was being done, and he felt that in India we're not doing enough, even though we had a national clean air plan. So this has been part of my learning. So, and also sharing the experiences that there are capitalists, financial geniuses, industrialists who have all come into this space and who believe that they have a social responsibility. And now we've started talking about, green philanthropy because the environment is key.
Correct.
It has been damaged much more than what it should have been. And I do believe that it's time for us to really give it top priority to set all this right. I'm happy that I'm in a space where we are contributing in our own small way, working with all the municipal corporations in Delhi, with the government of Punjab, Lucknow, Patna. So I'll not talk about the work, but in 2 years, we've really expanded our footprint, and we do believe that we're doing impacting work. And brief answer, definitely yes, every corporate must incorporate this as part of their vision, their governance, their norms, and everything that they do. I think, Vivek, I don't think we have a choice.
Fantastic. I think we need to take responsibility. I hear loud and clear, sometimes because the world needs it, sometimes because of our past, like you rightly said. And I think most of us are guilty to a large extent to that, at least I guess with the exception of Taran here, all of us have spent long years in this world. So some part of our world, we did not recognize the importance of this. So thank you very much for that. And moving from what you talked about, where, you have created wealth, you have realized when I say you, I mean the corporate world, and you are now focusing on that. Moving on to you, Dr. Evita Fernandes, who took a very different path. Here's the path where you successfully ran a hospital, and you continue to, in a certain manner, be associated to run that hospital, but decided, I think about 2 years ago, if I'm not mistaken, to change the model of the way it should be run, and did something which a lot of people may have kind of, I'm sure, reached out to you and say, Dr. Evita, what are you doing? And so why don't you talk to us a little about what prompted you to take that decision, and what went through your thinking, and how has it been in the last year and a half since you transitioned?
Thank you. Thank you, Vivek. Thank you first for inviting me onto this panel, because I'm in the pregnancy and birth area, and I wondered what this had to do with green philanthropy. And of course, it has everything to do with that. I need to rewind a little, Vivek, to understand where we're coming from. Remember, my parents started the hospital 73 years ago with 2 beds. And when they handed it over to me in 85, it had about 35 beds. And I was very clear that I wanted to develop an institute where any woman walking through the door should feel safe. So it meant, changing from a proprietorship model into a whole different model of an institute. And when I began setting up a team, and then we began to burst at the seams. So the actual hospital wasn't enough. So now I thought, okay, let's build a 100-bed hospital so we can serve more people. And for which I had to go for a loan. So we had to create a company. And it was Fernandez Private Limited. But from the day it began, we never ever dipped into the profits. There were no dividends, nothing. So I just ran it in a very transparent fashion. I've been an employee number 1. And we just paid our taxes. We never dealt in kickbacks. There were no bribes, nothing. But as the business kept expanding, I realized as I grew older that, after my parents passed on, I was sort of carrying this. And I felt, no, we've done a lot of work here and the work is improving. I love what we're doing. Let's make this into some kind of a legacy that will continue. And whoever takes it from me should not worry about things. So that's when I decided, let's convert it into a not-for-profit. Though I was actually like a not-for-profit for all practical purposes. So when I did that, my auditor, Ajay, asked me to go back and come back after a few months. When I told him about this, he said, are you crazy? But I just felt I had to do it. And I've never looked back. In 2018, we converted to a Section 8 company. And there's a strict board of directors. And it just adds to the level of transparency. And I never felt lighter to even think that not even a square inch belongs to me anymore. Privilege to be able to do that, because now the teams were built over the last 20 years. They don't need me in clinical work. My CEO has been kind enough to let me indulge in promoting midwifery and normal births. He thinks I'm a liability to the organization because when you have midwives in the hospital, and we've had them for 10 years now, your normal births increase, your C-sections decrease, you're not generating the kind of revenue that you would. And now just the simple joy of working with the Telangana government, the privilege, training nurses into midwives. So public hospitals have access to high quality care. The midwifery philosophy, Vivek, is the heart of midwifery rests on one thing, that the woman is capable of birthing. All she needs is to believe in it. She needs the knowledge. She needs the support. And the midwife, as we define her today, is a highly skilled healthcare professional who goes through a very focused process of training. So she's ready to handle emergencies. She takes care of the majority of the pregnant population, which are healthy mothers with no complications. So we doctors then have all the time to focus on the mother who needs our attention.
Yes, correct.
Right now, if you look at 100 mothers yourself, you may have 25 who actually need my attention, and 75 are safe in the hands of the midwife. So today, 10 years later, there is a waiting time of 2 weeks to get a midwife appointment for a pregnant woman. We just don't have enough midwives. The country needs 96,000 midwives, the government of India has reckoned, because we have 27 million births a year. And with institutional deliveries and financial incentives, you can imagine what's happening in our public health care facilities. The volumes are overwhelming. Now, why am I in this space? Because 46% of maternal deaths happen around childbirth, and they are all preventable. 40% of stillbirths happen during labor and childbirth, preventable. So if you have a skilled professional, and that's a midwife, can you imagine the impact on maternal mortality, infant mortality? And if you're offering this care with compassion, keeping the mother's dignity intact, drawing a curtain, give her privacy, getting her to have a birth companion so she doesn't, birth amongst strangers who are abusing her and, sort of violating her dignity. This woman steps into motherhood with confidence
and
because
pride.
she was taken care of at the most vulnerable period of her life. And to me, that is, you can't put a price on that. So we need midwives to help us birth the new humanity. And to me, that is an environment problem, because the next generation, we need to have healthy mothers, we need to have healthy babies, and midwives is what it's all about.
Fantastic. And what a different way of doing the green philanthropist job. But before I move on to Taran to talk to us a little about his story, I want the audience to understand that this story that we heard from Dr. Evita isn't a small story. So Dr. Evita, at the time when you created this Section 8 company, if I may ask and indulge you, what was the turnover that you were doing at the Evita, the Fernandez Hospital?
My God, what were we doing?
A ballpark.
Probably close to about 100 or a little more than 100. I hope I'm right, Pramod.
Yes. but I want people to understand that this isn't a small initiative. The point I was trying to make here is that this was a
I was told, Vivek, I have no idea, but I was told that if I had actually sold the company, I would have made a whopping amount. And why was I being so stupid? Because we are blessed to have credibility and running a sustainable model. But I just felt that this was the only way we could give back to the community. Because Vivek, if we don't get birthing right, that's the beginning of the story. The rest of the story doesn't matter then. And that's why, to me, this is so vital that what we do, we need to do it absolutely well and do the right thing for the woman, not what generates revenue, but what is right for the woman.
And from what I hear, the number would have been a few hundred crores, Dr. Evita, at that stage. So here's someone who, if I may use the word, walked away from a few hundred crores because that's the passion she believes in, and that's the legacy, as she said herself, she wants to leave. So kudos to you, Dr. Evita, and I think the world needs more people like you who are not just passionate, but who are willing to put, as they say, put your money where your mouth is. And here's a phenomenal example of you having done that. So thank you.
So proud to
come back.
So proud to be on the panel with you, Dr. Fernandez. I'm sorry.
And Vivek, just want to add, right? I think Dr. Fernandez, I would love to share my story. I had my second kid in peak COVID, say 5 months ago. And, he was born in, the Fernandez Hospital via water birth, right? And completely delivered via midwives. There wasn't one doctor in the hospital, right? And in fact, I had my first kid who's 5-year-old. He was watching the entire delivery with me, right? And he was fascinated on how it was handled, right? The second baby popped out in just a few hours, and the staff was amazing. My first kid was born in the US, so my wife was, obviously nervous about India, but the treatment and how she was dealt with the midwives was phenomenal. So kudos, right? I think.
Thank you. And this is the care we are giving in public healthcare facilities for the poorest of the poor woman. How can you put a price on that?
Absolutely.
That's what equitable care is all about.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Thank you, Taran. But because you also gave me a reason, every time, like I did at the beginning, I make this statement that so many people in Hyderabad have benefited. And usually Dr. Evita comes back and usually, like she did today, says, no, you are exaggerating it. Here we are in a panel of 4 people, and this isn't something that I also was aware. Okay, so here in a panel of 4 people, we already hear the experience someone has had. So here's 25% number if I was to go by that, So thank you. And with that, coming to you, Taran.
The story must be shared, Vivek.
Yes,
the story must be shared. Very, very important because there's such a huge message in all this.
Yes.
Dr. Fernandez, we really are blessed. May there be more like you. The world and the country really, really needs us. Thank you.
Ditto to all of you. Ditto to all of you. Thank you.
Fantastic. So Taran, moving from, hearing about, people giving back, and quite often, and I keep saying this, quite often in India, it is looked at that philanthropy, giving back is considered later on in life, when I have done multiple things, I have an awakening. Sometimes it's about, let's say for somebody like me, it's about midlife, that, okay, now I want to switch gear. But here's someone who started this very early. And I would like to hear from you, your perspective of how you got into this space and how you're looking at this space, because you are, in a certain sense, a path breaker. And also, how is the world looking at you when it comes from a funding perspective? Because I know you've been very successful also in that sphere of having raised the first round and a few rounds of funding. So talk to us a little, one, about your journey. Why did you start it? And how are you seeing the world respond to you from a funding perspective?
Yeah, absolutely. Right. So I started Neiman, say, back in 2018 or end of 2018. Right. I was a technology guy working in the US, worked there for about 10, 11 years, right, in core strategy, and helping some major pharma companies build, very large technologies over the years, right? And so I was looking at sneakers or the entire fashion accessory space for quite some time. And when I set out on this journey to make it, I wanted to learn the entire space from ground up. So I traveled for about 6-7 months to learn the manufacturing side of it, sourcing side of it, and the design side of it. That's when I realized how sneakers were made, right? And how our traditional brands or our Western competitors make in it. So everything that goes in a sneaker is made with synthetics, right? Is made with man-made fibers that emit, say, about 8 to 10% of the carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, consume a lot of water, right? And plus 35 to 40% of the sneakers were made with leather, which comes from animal skin, right? So I said, there's got to be a better way to do this, right? We've started to look at food, which comes from better sources. We've started to look at better ways of clothing. Why aren't we looking at better materials to use in footwear, right? And that's how the thought process began, right? I wanted to make something which is extremely, extremely comfortable, which looks good, feels good, and is great for the environment, right? Because over the past few decades, several products have come out which have been environmentally conscious, but they looked, extremely bad. So to make it successful, the whole idea was, and to make it global, the whole idea was, people need to adapt to it, right? People need to look at the product and say, this is a change that they want to make, right? And that's how the idea began in 2016 or early 2017. So we spent about 2.5 years in creating the entire supply chain. We were the first ones in India to introduce merino wool sneakers, right? So that comes from merino sheep, which originate in Australia and New Zealand, right? So a natural and a renewable fiber, which the sheep grow year after year. They only consume water, grass, and air, so no chemicals involved, right? Completely sustainable. That was the first material we introduced. The second one was organic cotton. We've introduced slippers that are made with recycled tires, right? So tires post-consuming, they can't be dumped, right? They can't be recycled. So we said, tire has a phenomenal grip. What if, the slippers that we wear come with the same grip? Plus they have sustainability, because we are using the concept of circular economy, of using materials that already exist in the environment, right? And our last product that we have introduced, say, a few weeks or a month ago, is India's first ever sneaker that's made with recycled PET bottles, right? Now, we obviously know the amount of plastic waste that's dumped around the world. So we said, why don't we do something about it? Let's consume these plastic bottles. We, crush them and we make them into a shoe upper, and then we make a super comfortable sneaker out of it. So we've been around, say, very, very young. We've been around for just 2.5 years, but we've been fascinated with the amount of learning we've had in the Indian ecosystem, the amount of support that we've had from the consumer point of view, right? People rage about, the sneakers that we make, and, they spread the word, right? Vivek, coming to your question on the investor point of view, right? I think when we started 3 years ago, it was extremely challenging back then, because people still consider us to be extremely niche, right? People consider us to be not mainstream. But I think what we are doing is we are bringing on a trend, right? We are obviously the first ones in India to do it. but we're bringing about a change, right? We're bringing about a change in how people think about footwear, how people think about the choices that we make, right? And why they should adapt to a different lifestyle. So as things have evolved, I think we've been able to do a decent job in content marketing and getting people up to speed on how our products are better and how they affect the overall scheme of things, right? They're not only getting a product that's good for them, but that's great for the environment.
Right.
So hence, we've been able to raise a few rounds of investment. And I think like Abhay mentioned, things have changed now, right? There's been a lot of inward interest. There's been a lot of money that's available today, right? Rather than say 3.5 years ago, right? So there is.
And not knowing what interventions to make. So
organizations and right areas where we can make a difference. For every philanthropist, I believe you have to demand bang for your buck.
Fantastic.
Give your money
Thank you,
and
Vijay.
ask for accountability for your money. Thanks, Vivek.
Thank you, Vijay. And accountability brings me to a question I have for you, Taran. That talk to us a little about measurability in this space. Quite often, people have this notion that I'm doing something sustainable, giving back to the society, but there are no norms. I don't know what that means. So talk to us a little in this space, because you're doing some outstanding work, and you come, like you said, from a pure technology play where we are so KPI driven. Everything is so clear and clean. So talk to me a little about how have you found that transition? How is this space in that measurability?
I think it's getting there, right? Wherein it started. Now, footwear, in a sense, is not 100% sustainable, right? There are going to be some chemicals that are going to be used. There are going to be some artificially sourced materials that are going to be used, right? And we don't claim to be 100% sustainable because that's not possible today. But as the time has progressed, we are starting to measure the amount of carbon emission, right? That our shoes perhaps go through during the entire manufacturing to the delivery piece of it, right? So that's information that we hope to give to our end consumer by the end of this year or perhaps early next, right? So that tells them how much is our product emitting versus something that is available, perhaps in the market, right? And how much natural material that we use today, right? And what are those natural materials? So there's entire transparency, right, from sourcing to design to the delivery piece of it, right? And we do give, say, 70% of it, but I think we want to get it to a point where it's completely transparent, and we're getting there, right? Because consumer today wants to know what he or she is contributing to, right? And how we're doing better. So I think it isn't there yet, but I think we're building the systems for it as time progresses.
Fantastic. And I think that's an important aspect, because the more the measurability, like you rightly said, the more the visibility, the more the accountability, the more, we will understand this space and grow. And coming to you, Dr. Evita, in your own, so we heard from Vijay about the mindset of people working in that, but as a founder, as someone who was at the helm and running things to the space you have chosen to take on, what did it take for you to undergo or to bring about that mindset change for yourself? Because I'm sure every time you walk into the hospital today, you're walking in with a slightly different mindset, I'm assuming today, as you did in 2017. You're on mute, I think, Dr. Evita.
Sorry. Thank you, Vivek. The mindset is virtually the same in one sense, Vivek, because, for me, doing what we did or continue to do was just such a privilege and a blessing. And you were so conscious of the fact. And my message to people like me who have been fortunate to inherit a hospital, inherit a business, you've got a head start in life. So, you can't keep on hoarding. You have to find your level of contentment as quickly as possible and start giving back to make this world a better place. The joy I get when walking through the hospital today is a lot of people don't recognize me. And to me, that's the perfect compliment to the organization. I don't think my thinking has changed very much. I just experience a tremendous sense of freedom that it's now being handled by somebody and it'll continue while we can focus with the government and work in public healthcare facilities. So again, I endorse what all the panelists have said. We who have the privilege of running our own businesses have this amazing ability to do good because the buck stops with us. It's we who make the decisions. And I think that's an amazing privilege to be able to do that. Thank you.
Fantastic, Dr. Evita. And that's what makes you, and the great work you've done. And you get so much respect, especially from people like me. And I'm sure my fellow panelists join in that for making that transition. So outstanding. And Abhay, coming to you, we started our discussion with you, and I'd like to kind of come back to you and give you the last word. But before that, congratulations, as I hear that while you were speaking to us, the Prime Minister was actually at your stall in Lucknow, looking at the amazing work Recykal has been doing. So congratulations to you and great work that's going on. So congratulations. And I'd like to hear from you as the last word on what do you think about this whole green philanthropy and what's the way forward?
I think my thoughts here are the green philanthropy is actually the philanthropy thing is changing. If you see in last couple of, it is globally, it is happening. If you look at the Jeff Bezos initiative of Earth, then Earth Fund, then if you look at Salesforce CEOs, 1 trillion organization or 30 by 30 organization. So everyone actually is now earlier more focus was on the health, education, poverty, that side of the investment or the charity was happening at that side. But in last couple of years, I think people are started thinking seriously about green philanthropy, about environment, about the other aspects of which has a wider impact on every individual living here, not just the human being, but also animals and everyone. It's not limited to that. So that quite a wider scope has came up. And if you look at one thing which I feel that one person cannot change the world. That's very clear. Even Jeff Bezos used $3 billion or Salesforce founder used $1 billion. It's not that green philanthropy will be limited. It will not have the impact, the larger kind of impact and kind of investment. Everybody has to take a mini step. So I feel that one person cannot change the world, but one person can change one person at least, right? At that level, if we could really look at this philanthropy in those lines. Otherwise, what we'll have couple of big billionaires putting in some amount aside and investing and giving it back for the purpose of green philanthropy, which is the new buzzword for last couple of years. I feel the COVID has changing the mindset of the people. Till April, March 2019, everyone was that I am a CEO of this company, I'm a big man. Everyone had that bigger ego into their head and everything else is nothing. Like I can buy anything. But then everyone realized in the first 4 months that I'm nothing, right? In front of the nature, in the environment, in the whole world, I'm just a small piece, right? And that actually is and last 1.5 people have realized the value of nature, environment, climate. So if we could really see that larger adoption of green philanthropy at an individual level, I'm sure there are billions of people, they are not going to change overnight, but that change I think looks like possibility. Even at my scale, I try to do something. Madam is doing many, many things, but I see that change happening. And there is a huge investment coming there. Like there are CSR funds available. There is Alliance for NPC. There is an organization who is like $10 billion they have put in just to bring change into the waste management part of it. So there are fundings and things available. What we need is that many of us, it's not just one Jeff Bezos or one Salesforce founder. Many of us are not just one madam. We need to have thousands of people coming forward and contributing it at their level. Not doesn't need to be $1 billion. It can be 1,000 rupees. So I think that change is needed, and if that happens, we'll see this green philanthropy taking a new shape altogether in next couple of years.
Fantastic. Thank you, Abhay. So 2 very clear messages. One, don't wait to be doing something big. Small is a good way to start, and each one of us can make a difference. And I think the second piece I heard pretty much from all of you is that it's also very important to have an ecosystem. Each of us can be part of building a larger ecosystem, whether we take it from Dr. Evita's experience of saying it's no longer restricted to one hospital. Now it is happening across multiple hospitals. And similarly, each of you is doing so. As the cliche goes, it takes a village to raise a child. And I think if we have to really develop a concept like green philanthropy, I think each one of us needs to play our role, and each of us has a role to play. So it isn't that, when I become $1 billion company, I can do something. Even if I have $100 in my pocket, I'm sure there is something I can do. If I have 10 rupees in my pocket, maybe if I have nothing in my pocket, I can still do something. And of course, when I become $1 billion company, I can do something. So it's matter of putting our mind to it. It's matter of kind of finding in our environment, in our surrounding, what we can do, and finding in our skill sets what we can do, and bring a combination of all of it together and say, my journey of being a green philanthropist starts now. And it does not need to wait for me to become 55 years of age, $1 billion in value, or any of those artificial parameters. Yeah. So I think, thank you very much for each of you to bring a very, very different perspective. And like I said, all 4 of you very accomplished and doing outstanding work and continuing to focus on the green philanthropy as one of the primary drivers in very different ways. It's not one size fits all. Each of you is doing it in very, very different ways. It was absolutely wonderful having this conversation with all 4 of you. Thank you very much for joining us today.
You.
And for
Thank
all
you,
the audience,
Vivek.
the audience, I hope it's given you some insights to understand a little more about what's happening. And if any of you are keen, you can reach out to all 4 of them to understand their models better and join them and work with them in the spaces that they are working. So thank you very much. And
thank you.
Have a wonderful day ahead.
And thank you to all.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you to all. It's such a pleasure meeting all of you. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.